Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel. We're so glad to have you here today. I am Jean Lau from Creative James Media, and this is the launch of The Way We Used to Walk. Oh, we already have 4 people watching. Fabulous. That's a good start. So we are celebrating the launch of this fabulous novel, one of our first horror novels that we have published, and we're very excited about it. It's our first adult horror novel, and it's also our first one by 2 fabulous authors, Megan and Mark. So nice to have you here. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having us.
So I see people are chiming or coming on. You want to chime in? Please join us in the chat and type anything in that you have, like a question or congratulations or anything that you want to ask Megan and Mark. And we already have from Matt, happy launch day. So we're
thanks, Matt.
It is a fabulous launch. So the first thing that I really want to talk about with the two of you is the fact that this is unique and that the two of you wrote this together. And you don't always see a successful co-written book. Do you think there's a secret that made this a success for the two of you?
Have a long history before you try to write. We've been friends for what, 20 years? Over 20 years?
22 years.
22 years. Yeah. And as we said in the author's notes, we've been telling stories together pretty much that whole time. We started with role play gaming together, and we've written other little things. And so we've just gotten in this pattern of it. We're used to
it. We have, for nearly as long as we've known each other, referred to each other as Wonder Twins.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is share a brain, but I don't know how to tell people how to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and there was also distance between the two of you. So how did that work? Were you writing and then exchanging things through email, or how was that possible?
We talk about everything. I think we actually probably talk things to death too much because we're both over talkers, and we wanted to make sure that everyone's okay with everything. So we had a lot of conversation ongoing as we wrote, but then we would sort of have assignments, right? Like, you write this part and you write that part, but then sometimes we'd be on the same part at the same time, like chasing each other around the page almost, where I'd be typing something and then I'd see Mark going up and finishing something else. And so that was really fun. So, but then we had lots of kind of sections, and then we had to sew them together, which was another fun process, really, of like, where was this going to go and what was this about again?
And the technical answer is Google Docs.
Yeah.
We did everything in Docs that we could share, and we could look at drafts and go back and revisit earlier versions.
Yeah.
I like that.
From my perspective, 100% of this book was written on my phone with a Bluetooth keyboard.
Wow.
Same.
That's
no
impressive.
Keyboard, though. I just did it on my phone.
That's
we both had young kids at the time, and there was a lot going on, and the free time that I had was like lunch break at work. And on occasion, my buddy Brian and I were carpooling at the time. So if Brian was driving, I'd prop my phone up on the dash and type on my little Bluetooth keyboard.
There you go.
So that's where we had windows of time to work.
Yeah.
I agree with Meg, though. My favorite chunks are when we were writing at the same time, and we'd have a document open, and there were times where I would pause because I got lost in the middle of a thought and couldn't figure out the word I wanted, and I'd see the word I wanted appear before me as Tom took over.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's like, there's writer's eye, and then there's like that writer's eye, which was like an extra special. Not all the time, but when it happened, boy, it was nice.
But that's what I love about this book, because although it was written by both of you, it still is seamless. You really can't tell that it's 2 separate author voices. It does seem like one voice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I think that rolls back to the fact that we've known each other for 20. We say we've known each other for 20 years. We've been a part of each other's daily lives for 22 years.
Yeah.
We saw each other every day at college, along with there's almost 15 of us in our sort of collective storytelling / found family group. And like the day after we graduated, one of us emailed a good chunk of the rest of us and said, like, hey, I miss seeing your faces. It's weird not seeing your faces. And that email just kept going. It's been 22 years now, and that email gets anywhere from 20 to 100 responses a day. We all talk together constantly. We raise our families together. We vacation together.
That's really neat.
So I think part of why that shared voice is so easy is we're just like, we've grown up together.
Yeah.
Like it's you know how when you talk to siblings, they often sound the same because they have the same references and the same language and the same sort of touch points. That's
Right.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
We were stupid kids together. I mean, we were dumb kids when we met. You know, we were barely out of high school. At least for me, I don't know about you, but for me, college was very much a time of who am I?
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a very small town, and so you are who you've been your whole life, right? And everyone knows your parents and your family and your business and all of that. And going to college, I very definitely was like, I am going to decide who I am in college. And Mark was there from like day one, you know, kind of helping me figure out who I am.
Yeah, we really helped build each other.
Yeah.
We helped each other find our voices in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
Yep.
It's like you have a found family in real life, and that translated to the found family that your characters had.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very much so. There's no one for one. Like, I can't point at any individual
No.
character and say, oh, that's definitely this friend. But they are absolutely an amalgamation of our people.
Yeah.
I love it. So our first question, Matt wants to know who came up with the idea for the story first, or was it a mutual aha moment?
I came up with Charlie first, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really wanted to write a character like Charlie. And when I had him in my head, then we kind of had to build around him, right? Like, I've got this guy, what are we going to do?
Tom's pitch, Meg, who we also call Tom for
Very complicated, like long story.
for 22 years. It dates back to the beginning of our friendship. But Tom's pitch to me was, here's this character I love. I want to write a story about getting the band back together. And at the time, it was literally getting the band back together. Our first envisioning of them was a band.
Yeah.
Who had like mucked around together in college as a
Yeah.
band and decided to literally get the band back together. And that idea only sort of survived in theme,
Yeah.
not in practice, but that's where the story started.
Yeah, definitely. But as you know, as I said, we talk things over. So we had like, okay, we've got this character and this character, and how do they fit together, and how do they? So we had, before we even started writing, I think we had a vague idea of the family, kind of what we wanted to do with them, and then we started doing our assignments. We're like, well, what if they do this together? What if they do that? And then and from those, I think we kind of were able to go out on the actual like theme of the story.
Yeah.
Sounds it was more like a character-driven story than a plot-driven story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely started with Charlie and grew to Mona and the pups and Smida, and just really like, once we had them, you know, the plot, they don't serve the plot. The plot served them and what we wanted them to learn and how we wanted them to grow and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I love it. I love character-driven stories. The characters are just so real and
Thanks.
relatable, and they're really driving the story. Those are some of the best stories out there.
We're
Just-
character people too. I mean,
Yeah.
so much of our creative stuff has been role-playing games. And I'm not a DM. I'm a player. I'm very bad with like the mechanics and stuff. But boy, I love making a character.
Yeah.
Love making a character. So that's the easy part for me. I love this.
Was there a character besides Charlie that you love to create the most?
I can answer that to start with.
Yeah.
The most of me is in Joe, the kind of quiet jeans wearing everyman who feels like the boring one in the center of a group of interesting, creative, clever eccentrics. So the most of me is in Joe, but the characters I love the most are Allison and Ez. To me, I've said it a million times, Charlie is the heart of this story, no doubt. Like, he is the main character, but to me, this is a love story about Allison and Ez. That's what this book is.
I love Charlie. I don't know. Like he's if he's aspirational for me. Like if I could choose anyone in the world that I could be, it would be Charlie. Which is maybe not great for like your main character. I don't know, but I love Joe. I loved Smita because she reminds me of my husband, actually.
There's a lot of Lucas and Smita, absolutely.
Yeah, like just
Actually,
very.
She was actually my favorite.
Oh, is she? Oh, see, she's the rock, right?
Yeah.
Like Charlie's the heart, but Smita's the rock.
Yeah.
And she's just grounded and is gonna get everyone through this, and is, not really flights of fancy, is fun and exciting and an interesting person, but like very steady. And that's Lucas, that's my husband. And so,
And also literally a professor.
and
So,
literally
yeah.
a professor. Yeah, she's an economics professor because my husband's an economics professor.
There you go. I like that. Well, I am curious, since this was such a character-driven story, did you have the horror genre in mind in the beginning, or did that just kind of evolve?
Yeah, we no idea
No.
it was a horror story. Like someone else had to read the book and tell me it was a horror
Yeah.
story before I clocked it as such.
Yeah.
And it absolutely is. But to me, it's like a romance with some monsters in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Rhonda Parrish and Amanda C. Davis, who's my sister, but Rhonda and Amanda are great authors in their own right. You should definitely check them out. But they were our very gracious beta readers, and both of them were kind of like, "Hey, did you know you?" Because we were kind of figuring like, what are we gonna call this? Are we gonna try to sell it as an urban fantasy or like sci-fi? What is this? And both of them were kind of like, this is horror, right? We're like, no, we did not know that.
I don't generally muck with horror. Like that's not my scene. I don't watch a ton of it. I don't read a ton of it. So it's very, very odd to me that that's what came out when we told a story.
Yeah.
But here we are.
It works.
Well, it's the story that needed to be told. The characters the characters drove it to the heart.
It is very much, and it was legitimately 6 months ago when I realized that this story was about deconstruction. That the villain and the arc of this story is about what happens when you literally lose your sense of identity and have to put yourself back together again. And that's a lot of what I was working on personally at the time when we were writing, and did not clock. Like that was not intentional. That was not allegorical. Did not clock it until like 6 months ago.
Well, we are going to pause here and listen to an excerpt. So if one of you want to get the excerpt ready, while they are reading their first excerpt, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We would love to hear from you. But I think Megan's going to do the first one.
Yeah. I'll do Christmas. We were kind of debating. There's so many fun scenes of the family. And since that's our favorite part, I'm like, what can we do with the family? But this is a scene of the family celebrating sort of their own Christmas together.
When they were younger and at college.
When they were younger, yeah. This is back when they were in college. Thank you.
I'm just going to turn and listen.
The next morning, Charlie stumbled out of his room wearing only a blue, open bathrobe and a festive pair of boxer briefs. A light was on, not the main overhead light, but a small corner lamp next to the rickety bowl-shaped chair where Smita sat perched like a bird in a nest, wrapped in blankets and reading a book. Joe was in the tiny kitchenette cooking over a plug-in grill, the smell of breakfast sausage having roused Charlie from his slumber. He kicked the couch, and when nobody moved, sat heavily on top of the two young women who had fallen asleep there the night before. Inez groaned and bucked him off, only to land on top of him on the floor a moment later when Alice gave her a shove. "Go brush your teeth," Alice said. "Your breath smells like stale coffee and rotten pumpkin." What? Inez asked. "Rotten pumpkin?" "Yeah, have you ever smelled rotten pumpkin? It's putrid." "Love you too, baby." "Love may be blind, but it is not anosmic. Brush your teeth and then come kiss me good morning." "What's anosmic?" asked Charlie. "Is that when you can't stop bleeding?" "It means not having a sense of smell," said Smita, not looking up from her book. Alice nodded. "Like being blind in the nose?" asked Joe, walking in with a plate of eggs and sausage. Alice rolled her eyes. "Sausage," said Charlie, plucking one from the plate. "Meatless sausages are on the other side of the egg barrier," Joe explained, gesturing at the plate where two stacks of sausages, piled perilously high, were separated by a great wall of egg. "You don't need to tell us, mate," said Charlie. "The color gives it away." "Toast and potatoes are in the kitchen. I'll be right back," Joe continued. He twirled around Inez, who was just emerging from the bathroom, as she beelined back to the couch and sat on Alice's lap so they were face to face. "Merry Christmas, baby," she said, drawing her in for a long kiss. "Ugh, gross," said Inez as she pulled away. "Your tongue is fuzzy. Why did I have to brush my teeth first and you didn't?" "Woman's prerogative?" hazarded Alice. "I think that's about changing your mind," said Smita, turning a page. "And I have it too," said Inez. "Now go brush your teeth, even." Alice lifted herself from the couch and Inez turned to watch, as she did nearly every time Alice left a room. Charlie laughed. "Your tongue's hanging out, darling," he said, shoving Inez. "I'm just trying to scrape the fuzz off." "Here's the rest of breakfast," Joe said, coming back with a second plate. "Whole wheat to the left, white bread to the right, potatoes are fried in tons of butter, and the remains of the sausage grease." "The boy clearly thinks we're colorblind," said Charlie. "He's telling me which toast is which, like I can't observe evil whole wheat from 50 paces. "Is colorblind like being anosmic in the eyes?" asked Smita, her eyes still in her book. I didn't realize you were reading a joke book, Charlie retorted. He reached out for a sausage, but Joe batted him away. Wait for everyone, you bottomless pit. I do have a bottom, and it's fantastic. Just go see if Mona's awake, Inez demanded, and hurry up or we'll start without you. Mona was sprawled in Charlie's bed, wearing one of his shirts and an old ratty pair of gym shorts. He thought she looked beautiful. Charlie slid in next to her and pushed a lock of hair away from her face. He draped one arm around her waist lightly so as not to wake her. Then he closed his eyes, breathed deep, and just let himself be. This was one perfect moment, and he wanted to soak it in and keep it close as long as possible. When he opened his eyes again, Mona was smiling at him. Hey there, Sleeping Beauty, she said. I think that's my line. Wake up earlier next time. He kissed her. I love you. I love you too, Charlie. Do I smell sausage? Even if the table hadn't been covered with wrapped presents, there wasn't enough room for them all to sit comfortably, so they had gotten used to eating wherever. Inez and Alice stayed on the couch. Having claimed the most comfortable seat early, they were not about to give it up. Mona made a plate up for Smita, who had finally relinquished her book, and then sat on the floor at her feet with her own plate. Charlie constructed a sausage, egg, and toast sandwich, ate it in 3 bites, and then started on the dishes. When Charlie returned from the kitchen, he jerked a thumb toward the laden table. Youngest one distributes the presents, he explained. Family rule. Always been my job, but guess who finally gets to sit around and be waited on this year? Inez looked at Alice. Do you ever get the feeling they make up these family rules just to get us to do stuff for them? I think you're on to something out. Alice stood, stretched, and crossed to the table, where a haphazard but impressively large pile of gifts waited for her to sort and assign. She picked up the presents she had purchased first, their shiny blue wrapping making them easy to spot. A quick tour around the room, and they were dropped in everyone's laps or at their feet. She repeated the process several more times, through the professor's immaculately wrapped gifts with hand-tied bows, Mona's functional but over-taped packages, Joe's gift bags, and Charlie's platinum silver paper that nearly blinded her when it reflected the light. Finally, there were only Inez's gifts on the table, each one wrapped in thick brown paper with thoughtful handwritten notes in her neat script scrawled across the tops. The last gift she picked up was Inez's gift to her. The small box was wrapped firmly in the brown paper with a small red bow adorning the corner. She read the notes. Mi novia, mi amor, mi corazón. You are all I need. You are beautiful and strong and charming. You'll always be my 1A. I love you. Merry Christmas, Nez. Hey, stop crying and sit down so we can start opening, Charlie demanded. He waved at Inez. Make your girlfriend stop crying. Inez grabbed Alice by the hand and pulled her onto the couch. She kissed Alice's eyes, but somehow that only served to make the tears flow harder. I tried, she said with a shrug. Don't try any harder, Joe pleaded. Mona looked behind her. Well, Professor? Smita looked around the room, beaming at her gathered family. Go ahead, she said, and the present massacre began. By the end of it, bows and wrapping paper were scattered everywhere. Charlie and Joe were loading up the Nerf guns Inez had gotten them. If I get shot in the head, I'm confiscating them, Smita warned sternly. Mona, aghast that Alice had never heard of Alkaline Trio or My Chemical Romance, was singing snippets of songs to her very loudly while waving around the concert tickets that Charlie had gifted her. And Inez, smiling broadly, was admiring the bracelet from Alice, a simple silver chain with the word forever in script dangling toward her wrist. Charlie glanced out the window and did a comedic double-take. It's snowing, he announced. Someone come make a snowman with me. Put some clothes on first, the professor said. A few minutes later, most of the group had clattered out the door, bundled up and laughing. Smita stayed behind to pick up wrapping paper, getting a large black trash bag and stuffing in handfuls. Did you forget something? She called when she heard the door open a minute later. Charlie, clumps of snow from his shoes dropping on the floor, walked over to her and bent down. Yep, he said, and kissed the top of her head. Merry Christmas, Professor. And he was gone again, out the door, humming a carol to himself.
I love the banter between all the characters.
That is, I had said earlier, there's not a one-to-one between our friends and the people in this book, but the way they talk to each other that's us. That is entirely lifted from the way our people talk.
I love it. We have some things here, so let's look at this first. So to me, this is also a story about growing up and how life isn't always how you'd imagine it would be. Could you speak to writing this story at this stage of life instead of, say, 10 to 15 years ago?
Hi, Aaron. I don't think I could write this story 10 to 15 years ago. We were writing 10 to 15 years ago, and it was a very different story.
Yeah.
It had some similarities. The trunk novel that we wrote back then it has some things. When I look back, I can see some things that are the same, but this novel, the way it is now, we couldn't do it. Yeah, we were in very different places 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah, I am, in many ways, I am the person I was born as. I don't change a lot, but in many ways, I am unrecognizable from who I was even a decade ago. And I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, this book is, at least the parts of it that I wrote, are largely about deconstructing and rebuilding, about losing your sense of self and struggling to understand who you are and how to move forward, but most importantly, how to move forward with the people you love.
Yeah.
Because when you do sort of hit those big life changes, which everyone does for various reasons, and you have to rebuild yourself, and when you rebuild yourself, you see the difference. You worry that the people who loved you because of who you were before may no longer love you anymore because you're someone very different. And a lot of this book is these people struggling to find their way back to loving each other.
Yeah. And unfortunately, not everyone gets the people that love them to still love them when they go through those changes. And you see that a lot in all sorts of different things that happen in life. But we've been very lucky that in our changes, our spouses have continued to be there for us and grown with us, and our friends have, our found family has. And that's why we could write this book, because we've gone through those changes and we have that core that we know what it's like to kind of, everything kind of goes, but when you come back, everyone's there walking along with you, really.
And younger us just weren't nearly as good of writers.
No, oh my gosh, no.
The next one is, congrats on the launch. You just answered my first question as I was typing. Do you have designs to write more in this universe with this group of characters?
So the challenge here is that this book has a very definitive purpose and ending. We love these characters, and we are actually, like, literally right now trying to crack a sequel because we love these characters and we want to see more of them. But it has to make sense within the universe that we've built. We have to have a reason for there to be more stories. I would read a story about them all just having Christmas together again next year, but that's not really a compelling reason to put a book on a shelf. So we have to figure out what the threat is that makes the book interesting and why that threat makes sense in the world that we've already built and with the problem that we've already solved. So we're actively trying to crack that, but we noodle around with other stuff too, because we just like creating together.
Yeah, we have at least two projects on the run, one of which is, we've had multiple, like I said, we overtalk things. We've had multiple conversations about, well, what about this? And what does it look like if we try this with Charlie in the group? And hopefully we'll get there. But, like Mark said, we're not going to just throw out a book of them, whatever, just to have it. We want to make sure that we do them right, I think.
Definitely. So when I was reading the book, it seems that there are character arcs throughout. So there's not just one character that's growing. There's multiple characters that grow throughout. Do you think that there is one character that stands out to you that has the most growth through the novel?
Ooh.
That's a good question. Inez?
Maybe. So Inez's arc is really truly about rebuilding, right? She, more than any of them, lost her sense of self in a really profound way and didn't know why.
Yeah.
Although I feel like a lot of her rebuild happens kind of towards the end. She may, I don't know. It's Charlie's story, and it's hard not to say Charlie, because Charlie is the one who remembers and is the one who is holding everyone else's grief inside of himself for so long. So in a lot of ways, Charlie isn't just on his own journey. He's on 6 people's journey by himself for a very long time. Again, I like so much of what I see in the story is Joe, and watching Joe quietly cry as his family falls apart and not know what to do about it is its own journey that really speaks to me. So
Joe's my second choice, I think. Although I think that if we do crack a sequel, I think that Joe's journey is going to be a large part of that, because not that he got short shift in this one, but it was, the pups had a big part and Charlie had a big part, and I want Joe to have time to work through his stuff.
Well, in a lot of ways within the family, Joe is there for everyone. That's
Yeah.
his job. That's the role that he serves. Joe is a caretaker. He looks out for his people.
Yeah.
And I think you see when we meet him in the beginning of the book, when he doesn't have that purpose anymore, he doesn't feel like his life has purpose anymore. And that's kind of his journey to go on.
Yeah.
I like that there are so many choices, so the reader can really decide who they think had the biggest arc. So
Yeah, that's the hope, that everyone can find someone to latch on to. Not everyone's gonna like Charlie, and they're wrong, but that's okay. But like, my husband loves Smita. That's who he followed, throughout the story. My mom loved Charlie, so
We both
Everyone's
love Smita
gonna
so
have-
dearly. And
Yeah.
I think it's because we love Lucas so dearly. Like subconsciously we put so much of him into that character.
yeah.
everyone's going to have that character they latch onto, and that's what makes the story so great because there's something in it for everyone. So I really like that aspect of it, and that's why if you haven't read the book, you have to go get it.
Please.
So, and it is going to be up on Amazon. It keeps going in and out on Amazon, but that should be fixed within the next 24 hours. So that's exciting. So, would you like to read another excerpt?
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My turn to sit back.
So I think for me, this is the bit in the writing where we kind of cracked the story,
Yeah.
which maybe shouldn't be true at the midpoint of the book, but this is just about dead center of the book. And this is when Charlie and Mona find the portal. And it doesn't really tip much of the story, but it sort of shifts the story, I think, from where it was to where it's going. And it's our two leads for the college portion of the story. It's our two leads being together and being in love and doing a thing.
Yeah. And I think, and you mentioned earlier, and I think this is true, that this section really is both of us. This is a really good section where I don't know what we wrote. It's both of us together.
I love this section because I can feel both of our voices in here. All right. What is that? Charlie said again. Mona felt a chill up her spine as she looked at the glimmering form above the pedestal. It shimmered and sparked green and yellow and purple. Trying to focus on the rough, translucent rectangle made her feel sick. Charlie, she said, let's go home. Charlie had drawn ahead of her and was now at the pedestal, 1 foot on the bottom of the stair. Sure, he said, but his eyes were on the flickering lights. Mona wasn't sure he'd actually heard her. She licked her lips. Charlie, please, I don't like this. It's wrong. Trust me, babe, Charlie said, and he reached out. Charlie, no. His finger touched the shimmer. It started with a song. It was a massive song, swelling and crashing over Charlie and dragging him under until he had to come up for air, but he couldn't. There was no air. There was only music. As he listened, as he drowned in it, it began resolving into smaller songs. It was every song Charlie had ever heard. Every lullaby and music box and storefront doorbell and I love you and him and the sound of rain and love song and worship and wonder sock and rock and church bell and bird song and silence. And Charlie slammed his hands over his ears, but the song drilling into him did not stop. It did not stop, but it began to change, to resolve into individual words, languages that burned into Charlie's mind. And with the words came knowledge. He knew suddenly that his world was only one world of many, all different by large and small degrees. He knew that there was a world where humans had died out long ago, in a world where music was magic, in a world so near to his own that the only difference was the college had a different name. And he knew that all the worlds were connected through one place, one landing, with portals like the one he touched, like the one that had touched him. The words were coming fast now, the knowledge faster. There were threats to his world, and they were coming through the portal, the Unmakers, the Hollow Eaters. They were through the portal already, and it needed to be closed. He had to close it. They had to close it, and if he didn't, he stumbled back, crying out. 1,000 memories which were not his own invaded the front of his mind, pushing everything else to the back. There were too many of them, and he couldn't focus. He couldn't think. Charlie, are you okay? What's happening, baby? It's okay. You're okay. Who was that? What language was it in? He thought he should remember, but there were so many things to remember now, and he couldn't sort them out. He was awash in memories, and they cascaded him in waves, threatening to drown him. Someone was touching him, something warm around his shoulders. Come on, Charlie. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. The familiar voice was harder to hear as he slid deeper under the sea of other lives, which were suddenly his. The other voices were louder. The languages he couldn't understand coalesced into a single multi-throated intonation. There were words in his head, and they wanted out. The portal had to be closed, and the words would close it. He knew which ones. It was his job to do it. He was born for this, had spent a lifetime, maybe many lifetimes, training for this. The words demanded release. They beat against the inside of his skull like desperate prisoners. It hurt like hell. Charlie, I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Snap out of it. The small voice weaved through the words and got swallowed by the cacophony. The words demanded to be spoken, but he resisted. There was something else, something important. The words would close the portal, but something else had to happen. He knew, but he couldn't remember. He flailed around in the expansive imagery, but it wasn't there. Or rather, it was, but he had no idea how to find it. There were too many of them, and they were so alien. The pain was immense. He screamed a pitchless, wordless howl, which he hoped would release some of the pressure threatening to explode within his skull. It didn't. He was dying. He said a word. Lightning raced from him, energy flowing from his head to his fingertips and leaping at the portal. His mouth was on fire. He realized the word had burned him on its way out. He felt hollow, and he remembered that the words drew their strength from him. He snapped his jaw shut before the next word could escape. He felt the power building, was afraid if he didn't stop them, the words might kill him. Then again, he was dying anyway. He drifted into the memories, trying to escape the fear by disconnecting from his body. It worked after a fashion. As time passed, he managed to force the pain into the background, to sublimate it beneath his own will. It was his pain, and he could control it with effort. He told the words to shut up. But with the pain managed, he realized he drifted so far away from his body that he couldn't remember who he was. He had memories of so many lives, each of them simultaneously intimate and foreign. Who was he? He had no way to know, adrift in an endless ocean of selves. He needed a foothold, an anchor, an element of his true self from which he could reconstruct the rest, but he didn't even know where to look. Every memory felt as real as the next, and he was too tired to sort through them. It was easier just to let go. Please, baby, I need you to come back to me. I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm here for you. You. A small voice. He knew that voice. He knew those words. He understood them, not as pictures or memories or impressions or interpretations. The voice was real. He belonged to that voice. He grasped it and wrapped it around himself, a drowning man clinging to a life raft that hit him just as he was slipping beneath the waves. He let it pull him home. His eyes fluttered. Tears splashed onto them from a face above his own, a face he knew, a name. You're Mona, he said. She laughed and nodded and cried harder. You're Mona and I'm Charlie. She nodded again, beaming at him through the tears. That's right, baby, that's right, she said, running a hand through his hair. What happened, he asked. She just shook her head, still crying. Charlie was content to lay still for a minute longer, letting her cool hands on his face ground him in this world until he felt steady enough to sit up. Then it was his turn to soothe Mona, to reassure her that he was back, that he was, at least mostly, okay. What happened, he asked again, when her tears and the whirling in his head had both subsided. Well, a hole in the universe opened up and you spit lightning at it, I think, Mona answered. I thought so, he said. Is it still there? She nodded. Yeah, I think I missed a piece of the instructions. Or several. Instructions? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. It's all a jumble and I need to not think about it right now or I might go away again. Don't you ever leave me again, she said and leaned over and kissed him. Charlie winced. Burnt my tongue, he explained. All that lightning spitting. I won't leave again. Promise? As long as you're here to remind me of who I am. She nodded. That seems fair. I am an expert in the subject, after all. Do you think you're up to walking? I'd like to get out of here, away from that thing. Me too. Let's go. He's still hurt, but he was already learning now to shift the words into the back of his brain where he could try to ignore them, and that helped a great deal. They left the cavern, arms so tight around each other it was impossible to know who was supporting whom. The portal sparkled in the gloom they left behind.
That's a good scene.
We like those two, yeah.
That was a good scene. Let me get this up right here. So we have this comment and question. So as an exposition junkie, I'd love to learn more about the source of the main conflict, maybe a prequel in the world. Would you ever consider writing a prequel?
Oh man, that'd be tough. I don't know.
The answer for me as an exposition junkie is yes.
Yeah.
We put a lot of thought into like
Mhm.
none of what actually, like none of how the portal works or who made the portal or any of that exists within this book. We talked about it incessantly
Yeah.
because it had to make enough sense that we could write and it would hold together, that we wouldn't be conflicting with our own logic.
Yeah.
But we also both really love soft magic and soft spaces and stories like Labyrinth or Face Like Glass is another great one.
That's a good one.
Space opera, I
Mhm.
would put in a similar place where like the logic is there, but the reader doesn't have to know it. As long as the world is cohesive, it sort of adds a mystery to it.
hmm
I'd like to write a prequel because I think the history is really, really interesting, but I feel like we'd have to find a way that made it fun and not just like a history textbook.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
Makes
I think we both are nerds enough too that like we also would be interested in going through and in this year, you know, the Monsters Cave, and this year, blah, 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 blah. But that's not, unless you're reading the Silmarillion and it's still not interesting, but you know, that's hard to do. So.
Definitely. So possibly boring prompt. Reading the amount of trialogue in the book, what would you say are your biggest technical writing challenges, and how do you each attack them?
I cannot write a fight scene to save my life. I can't. I just can't. I don't know. Like, I can't get my head around them. And so if there's any action scene, most of the time I was like, Mark, tell me what they're doing, because I can't like figure it out.
A lot of the answer is we shove it off to each other when we're struggling. Yeah. There are a lot of parts of this book where I would write the beginning of an idea and then in capital letters say, Tom, help, I don't know what goes here. And then I write the end of the idea. So a lot of the answer is we just pass it back and forth.
Yeah.
Which is nice that you can do that.
Overly verbose, that may be my biggest technical challenge. I can stack too many words on top of each other that mean the same thing. And Tom was very good at tagging those and cleaning them up, and sometimes taking 10 words and finding the right 2 words that meant the same thing and sounded better.
Yeah, I think that, because I think we're both technically proficient at like the basics, right? So we were not cleaning up commas or anything like that. But
Right.
the editing is where we came into a lot of that too, of like, this got away from us.
Yeah. We lost 1 or 2 of my favorite scenes because it just didn't make sense.
We wrote 3 weddings. 3 weddings for this book, and only 2 of them are in the... Yeah, 2 of them are in the book. There's a whole wedding scene, which is adorable. I loved it, but it didn't work. But yeah.
That's what they say, you kill your darling sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that wedding scene.
I had a grammar teacher in high school named
Can I
Miss
make a
Weaver.
suggestion?
Go ahead,
Can I-
yeah, please.
Think your fans might like bonus content. Put
That
it
would be
out
fun.
in a newsletter.
That
put
would
it
be
out
fun.
in a website somehow to get it out to your fans as something, and that would really entice more people to want to read the book too.
You could get the lost wedding, the
Yeah.
lost Atlantic City wedding.
So, if you're listening to this, make sure they do that for you. Make sure they get that.
There's a lot of text chat back and forth between us that is just like pedantic world building that is really fun for us that I guess we could buy.
Yeah. People might be
That
interested.
kind of
in
stuff
those.
is interesting to kind of see the behind the scenes of how it all worked.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, wait, I'm thinking, go. This might be done by.
So many times one of us would say, I have a really bad idea and I'm going to say it so you can make it a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've already established how great you guys are together. Is there anything you're doing apart from each other that you would like your other listeners to know about?
I don't know. I'm working on I call it online, my Ding Dang fantasy novel. That's my solo project I'm working on right now because it's just given me fits. But that's I think a big one for me trying to, but again, I don't have my action writer.
Yeah.
So in a fantasy novel, you have a lot of fights and stuff, and I don't know what I'm going to do about that.
I write a lot for personal reasons on my own. And there's stuff I've written for very specific audiences or very specific people. But I don't if I'm writing anything that I hope becomes a thing, it's writing with Tom. We've done a couple of D&D modules together. That's fun.
Yeah, we have like 2 D&D modules that we sell real
nice.
cheap. And that was a fun little break, I think, from like, because a novel's so big. And so, but this one we could just say, hey, let's write about a haunted train and put it in D&D. Yay.
It's fun just to write for fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we are very excited about this book. Can we see the cover?
Yeah. I'm so happy about the cover.
That is gorgeous. So, The Way We Used to Walk is out there wherever books are sold. So go out and buy your ebook, but also buy that paperback just to have on your shelf. And we hope you guys really enjoy it. We're so happy that you joined us today. We will be back in April with Mariah Stillbrook and another one of her novels. So we're very excited about that. But in the meantime, go buy this book.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Jean. And thanks
Well, don't just buy
everybody
the
for
book for you. Buy it for your friends too. Spread the word. Spread the word. Well, thank you for coming on. And we're very excited for you. And we hope to see you again.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being